Hey, hello. How y'all doing today?
Good, how are you?
Doing well. Other than my arm here, I've been doing the physical therapy and stuff, and I think I pulled a muscle somewhere in it. So ice pack. We'll see how this goes. You know what? It'll be better in the long run, but right now it's just like pain all the way up my arm, which I don't love. On the other hand, that's about me. And you guys are here because you guys have an exam coming up. You've got also content that you need to know and understand. And I was thinking that just to put you all on the same page, if I share a screen, want to remind you of something, in my opinion, relatively to very important. And so sharing would be a good call. And it's like, yeah, check Canvas. I guess that's what it boils down to. And I'm trying to suggest, and hold on, there we go. I'm trying to suggest here that, yeah, you should plan to use paper for the exam, not for every question, not for every answer, but rather, indeed, I looked at the test and I was thinking, it's hard to convert these things into multiple choice or the sort of things that Canvas can auto grade. And it's a small enough class; it's not a big deal. The questions are such that, yeah, you'll do your work on paper almost certainly. You'll come up with an answer, and you'll just write the answer in the blank. And if you want to type a little bit about why that is the right answer, fine, go ahead. But I don't expect or want you to do anything like, equation typesetting or anything like that. Just write it down on a piece of paper, anything that you'd want me to see, scan that and upload that. And so that's why for a 50-minute exam, I've got 55 minutes worth of time. So that should give you some 5 minutes, plenty of time to scan and upload any work that you've done on paper. And then I'll be able to use that for the sake of providing partial credit. And when I say partial credit, what I mean is if the actual answer is one half, but you answer three-fourths because you were wrong. If you did that because of a minor mental misunderstanding, in my mind, a minor misunderstanding of one topic, uh, you know, it's easy for me to see how you made that mistake if I'm looking through what you wrote up. And if I say, yeah, that's a minor mistake, I'll give healthy partial credit for that work, even though the answer is completely wrong in so many ways. And so, yeah, the writing it down on paper is your way of saying, just in case I don't get the answer 100% perfect, exactly right, I'm going to jot down enough that I know that I'll get partial credit that corresponds to what I am able to demonstrate as my level of understanding. Okay, so I want to emphasize that. Uh, I would say probably most students, if they're writing their regular, handwriting size, most students would be fine with about 4 or 5 pieces of paper, blank, entirely blank, and then you could scan that afterwards. Many students will be a lot less space than that. Some students I've seen for an exam, they'll take like 8. That's because they write big and they sort of switch to a new piece of paper every time, like they're halfway down the sheet. So it's a matter of you figure out what's right for you, but plan on scanning or taking a picture, uploading, somehow get into a PDF form what you want to upload so that way I can have access to that for the sake of giving you an appropriate set of partial credit points. If you don't get a perfect score, I want to give you a score that matches your level of understanding, not matches your level of oops. Okay. So there you go. That was the one thing I really wanted to be sure to emphasize. Coming up also tonight is due some homework questions from chapter 2. It's due at 11:59. Probably in the morning, right around 8:30 or so a.m. is when I'm going to be able to put the answers online for those homework questions. And in case you're wondering, where do the homework problems, where do you find the answers? If you go into an assignment, you'll see indeed that's where the homework answers are uploaded. So like if you clicked your way into homework, this is homework 2A, but if I had, shoot, I killed it off. I don't even know where to find assignments. Okay, assignments. So if I could see of the assignments thus far, homework 1A in the past, if I click my way into that, you see, oh, look, there are some solutions right there and there for the chapter 1 type 2 problems, the 1.3 and 4 problems. And so you can find a set of answers right there waiting for you. Okay. So if you want to wait until tomorrow to take the test, that's absolutely fine. I am not in any rush on this one. It's more you take it when you're ready to. And if you do wait until after tomorrow morning at about 8:30 a.m., the answers to the most recent homework questions out of chapter 2 will be available for you to look over before then you take your test. Any material, however, yesterday from chapter 3 will not be related to your exam. And if we do get to any new material today, which is possible, also not related to content that you'll be tested on. Okay. So I would love to tackle questions you have related to those sample exam problems where, again, provided some quick numeric answers and then a more fully worked out version of answers to each of those problems. And hopefully they're all right, those answers. But you got questions on any homework, anything that's due tonight, anything that relates to labs that will help you get ready for the test that covers chapters 1 and 2? Anthony's nodding no.
Professor, the
Yeah.
homework that's due tonight, it's going to be on the exam, right?
Well, let's look and verify. Homework 2A corresponds to entirely content from chapter 2. So yes, related to our exam that is, well, as of 1 p.m. today, you could take the test starting right at 1. And so if you feel comfortable with those homework questions that are due tonight and I've already finished them, I'd say take the test this afternoon if you're happy to do that. But yeah, chapter 2 and chapter 1 all on the test.
Thanks.
Mm-hmm.
Just to make sure I'm understanding correctly, we need to, like, it's better to upload our scratch paper work for partial credit. Are we uploading that work in the exam itself, like within the answer boxes, or is there going to be a separate
yeah, great question.
Assignment box for the
I'm
PDF?
really glad you asked. So that way you all sort of know what to expect. Yeah, the last question, which is worth 0 points, okay, literally is, hey, you want to upload anything? Just drag your PDF right into this spot and it uploads that file. Okay, so I'm assuming y'all can create a PDF. If you can't between now and then, let me know how you would want to be able to upload stuff. If you have to upload a document, a Word document, that's fine. I will not take Google Docs as the location where answers are because those could be changed ex post facto. So yeah, if you are able to save something as a Word doc, almost all of you should know how to convert that to a PDF. But if that is not straightforward, let me know, and I could probably change it to accept doc files or docx files in addition to PDF. So as for Excel for calculations, if you're going to be using those to do your homework, not homework, lab work, I think if you think a screenshot of that would make sense, that's okay. I tend to think that makes. I tend to think I wouldn't be using Excel for my calculations, okay? But if you feel that that's important to you, let me know, and you could email me the Excel file like right as the test is over, right after you upload your PDF of scratch work by hand. But you could upload the Excel file, and I could look and see the way you had done your work inside Excel. So yeah, I would rather you not, but if you have to, I can deal. As for when the exam is completed, it will be due by 11:59 p.m. tomorrow night, and it being a 50-minute exam, which I give you an extra 5 minutes for, I think 55 minutes. don't start any later than 11 p.m. Pacific time, because if you do, that's a problem. Okay. As for the exam itself, the sample exam gives you a pretty good idea of about the length of the test. So maybe I'll click my way into the sample exam so you could look at it if you haven't already done so. And this is a pretty good idea of the sorts of questions that you could see. And you can spot, oh, look, it's like some of the homework problems that we've already had. The only difference is some of these questions are sort of stretching across multiple sections of the book, whereas most of the homework is out of one particular small chunk of material. So this looks like 5 questions, 4 of which have about 5 parts each, 1 of which has only 2 parts each. This is a little bit longer than the test that you will face. And so if you could do this sample exam in about 60 minutes, writing out your answers on a piece of paper, you're probably in the right time range for being able to tackle the exam successfully later today or tomorrow. Someone else? You want to talk about any particular one of these problems? Yeah, how do students typically do on tests? Well, I'll just say that the exam 1 and exam 2, I believe, are not harder than the final exam. But the reason there are 2 reasons that they seem harder to students. One is you're just for the first time learning the material, and it's like a week and a half into class. By the time we get to week 5, you'll be much more comfortable with the earlier material in chapters 1 and 2. You're still just learning the material in chapter 2 right when we hit that test. And so that's one reason. It's like you've just learned it and you're not feeling as confident with the material just yet. The second reason exams 1 and 2 seem harder to students than the final exam is it's a 50-minute time limited exam. On the final exam, I'll have basically think 2 midterms of length of content, but I'll give you 75 minutes per each of those tests, if you will. You got 50% more time per question. And so, so the reason I do that, and it's not necessarily a good reason or a bad reason, but it's the reason historically I've done this, is having a very time pressure test on the first and second exams gives students sort of a bar that if they shoot for it and you're super successful, like you get an A on the exam tomorrow, you're going to say, oh, I know this material well enough. I'm studying it about the right rate. I don't have to really double down. If you're getting, however, something close to a C, and that's about a third of the class should be getting a C on this test, a third an A, a third a B, something like that. If you're in that C-ish range, you think, okay, I know I'm capable of doing better. Maybe I need to work on my speed a little bit and perhaps knowing the material better to more quickly identify the nature of the problem so I know how to solve it. Most of you, if I told you, here's the method to do it now quick, you could turn the crank and get it done. It's figuring out which is the right approach to take, where y'all spend the time. Okay. And so I would think that when I typically give a test in this class, I have someone turning in the test about half an hour into the exam. They're fully happy and confident, and they leave the room, and their scores either in the 60s or the 90s. It's somewhere in that range. Usually it's the people who are really low and really high scores that turn in their test right quick. And then the distribution of everyone else when they turn in their test is it's usually starting about 10 minutes or 5 minutes to go is when everyone else starts turning in their stuff. And the scores are sort of uniform across the C, B, and A range, with many of the A students double and triple checking their work. And I'm thinking, I was never one who did that, but probably I should have. But whatever. I'm sort of saying, In college, I misread one question on a 2-question final exam. It was an essay question in urban economics, and it turns out that I did answer a question correctly, just not the one that was asked of me. And so I got 0 points out of the 100 points in the final exam. And I'm sorry, 0 points out of the 50 for that question. And I got a perfect score on the other question. And on the midterm, I got a perfect score. So I got overall 2/3 of the points in the class. And I ended up with a D because I didn't read the question carefully. Let's rephrase. If you have the time to solve it and have a little bit of time left, you have a little bit of time to go back and check to make sure your understanding matches the questions. As for MATLAB or using R or Python for calculations, fine. Just grab a screenshot of your code and I'm going to see, okay, that makes sense. That works for me. I don't have any particular love of JMP other than it is one of the better packages nowadays to help people click their way through getting some of the heavy lifting, the calculations done. If you have another approach that you prefer, great, go for it. On this first exam, there'll probably be a little bit less likely that you'll want to be using the computer. As for the second exam or for the final exam, the reason is it's only in chapter 3 that we start to find the equations get complex enough that you're going to really need to use a computer if you have any, even a smallish data set. The computer will probably speed you up considerably in our later chapter 3 and forwards material. Okay, so that's a lot of generic, general questions. Do you have specific questions related to homework or lab activities or the sample exam? Okay. Well, I would like to think, I could be wrong, but I'd like to think that the material on our actual exam isn't the exact same as the sample exam, but the sample exam will well prepare you for your actual test. And I would like to think that the full answers, which are an attempt on my part to explain, to do the work, to do the scratch work, if you will, necessary. Now, I think my answer here on the first question, that was a little bit weak. Usually students would provide a little bit more detail than that. But you can read pretty clearly here anything in red and the calculations that are associated. You can see a lot of work goes into getting these answers. I think it all seems pretty quick, though. A lot of these are, yeah, I could write that out. I could write that out in plain English pretty quickly, okay? Now, things like that cap phi function, the normal CDF, if you use a normal table, great. If you use JMP's probability distribution calculator, wonderful. But if you tell me the value you got for Z, okay, I think you're in good shape, okay? That will help me know that you know what you're doing. So if you just spit out at me a value of, yeah, 7.44, if you're right, wonderful. But literally to do the work, to get that 7.44, it might be something more than just doing a screenshot. A screenshot may actually be successful for JMP's probability distribution calculator for some of these problems, but you know, if you want to do the work like here, you know, that is not hard to do either. Okay, so I think the answers there are clear. None of you are asking questions. Let me ask you a question. How many of you have actually looked over the sample exam so far? Like 5 of you, it looks like, raising some hands here. Okay, so yeah, I did get a good question. Question 3C from homework 2A that's due tonight. Oh, and then Clara, you're going to be next. So homework 2A that's due tonight. So question 3C. And let me see if I could pull up copy of chapter 2 here, and that is no, that is the wrong book. Okay, so let me grab a copy of chapter 2. Okay, and that will are you allowed to use an integral calculator on the exam? Is a great question. I'm fine with you using Wolfram Alpha. If you want to use an integral calculator, Wolfram Alpha seems absolutely fine. And so probably what I should do is build in a link to Wolfram Alpha, so during the test you could just click your way directly into that. I haven't done that yet, but I will remember hopefully to do that soon. So looking at the book, chapter 2. Okay, so the question is, could I talk about problem 3C from chapter 2? And so let's get into that. And here is chapter 2. Okay, so let's go ahead and move forward. Read it. Okay, so the production of this particular kind of craft is cast on a cast from an alloy containing zinc with some copper, and we've got various different percentages of copper content. And so so if I were to look at my percentage of copper content, I could get a distribution. And for A and B, you're not asking about that. But if any of you want to talk about A and B, we could do that right quick. If you unmute, I will be able to hear that, though. If you don't unmute, I won't be able to hear a request to do parts A or B. Okay, so what about then part C? And I'm assuming this is the part C you're referring to. How much could the largest observation, it happens to be a 10.1, could be increased without affecting the value of the median? Or how much could it be decreased without it impacting the median? So the largest value in our data set is a 10.1. And so let's look at the data right here, 10.1. And if this 10.1 instead of 10.1 were a 10.2, would the mean be impacted? Yes, it would. Would the median change at all? Well, no. The median is going to be the data point that's halfway through the list of the ordered values. And in here we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Sorry, I got 21, 26 data points. So somewhere between the 13th and the 14th values, the median is going to be somewhere in that about 3.35 range or so. And if the largest value was a 10.2, the median would still be about 3.35. What if the largest value is 10.8? The median still be 10.35. What if that 10.1 were even 100? The median would not be impacted at all. Okay, so I'm saying the median's not going to be impacted if that 10.1 were to be increased. It always will remain the same. However, if that 10.1 were dropped to be lower, what if it was, say, 3.5? It would be sort of like right there in the list. Instead, the ordered list would shuffle around a little bit, but still the median would be unchanged. It would have to drop below a 3.4 before the median would be impacted at all. And for those of you who read our book as saying the median's halfway in between the two middling values in our ordered list, that's reasonable. I would say the median is any value between the 3.3 and the 3.4. So I would say the median, if it were to drop below our current median, that's going to cause the current median to perhaps decrease. Okay, so I'm going to go with anything below our current median would cause the median to decrease. I believe that answers some of the question, but we do have another follow-up coming in via chat it sent via private chat to just me. So let's see if I can follow up on this. Okay, so that's a different question. And we've got quite a few. So let's get to our list in order, because I know that I think it was, which of you had raised your hand? And then I like said you would be next, but then, you know, you put it down. Okay, so I thought one of you, I think what's best is if you do express your question in English rather than in a direct message to just me. If it's a message to everybody rather than just me, it's going to be a little bit easier for me to reply to. So, Arissa, I think you were next, but I'm not sure. But for question 2, okay, in section 2.1, part C, it says trimming the lowest and the highest value. I'm not sure, is it question 2? Okay, so yeah, in part C here, it says, if you calculate the trimmed mean. Okay, so let's talk briefly about what the trimmed mean conceptually is. The mean is the mean of all of the data values. The median is just the central value in our ordered list from lowest to highest, okay? A trimmed mean is somewhere in between those two concepts. A 10% trimmed mean would be trimming the lowest 10% and the highest 10% of the values before you calculate then the mean of what's left. A 50% trimmed mean is get rid of the lowest 50% and the highest 50% of the data points and find the mean of the remaining data points, of which there might be none. The trimmed mean, a 50% trimmed mean in particular, it could be the median. And so if we were to find the lowest and highest value and then find the trim means, that's going to be done here. And because they're not put in order, I would have to sort of figure out which is the lowest and the highest. In this U group, the lowest is 4, the highest is 80. In the F group, the lowest is 0.3 and the highest seems to be 21. I would probably just delete those from the JMP data set and calculate the mean of the remaining data points, okay? And so the trimming percentage is the percent you get rid of from either end. And so if I have exactly 9 data, no, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, I've got 11 data points here. And so each of the data points would be about 9% of the data. I'd talk about a 9 or a 10% trim mean. If I got rid of the lowest one and the highest one, it'd be getting rid of certainly the 9% of the lowest and the 9% of the highest data points. But if I said get rid of the 10 at each end, you would still get rid of the same data points. Okay, so the trimming percentage would be nominally about 10. Okay, so I think okay, and Clara, I think you're next. So how about you, please? If you are unmuted, I'm not hearing you saying anything. But maybe that's because I'm not hearing anyone say anything. Okay, can any of you hear what Clara is saying, or is it just me? Like if one of you literally unmutes and says, I can hear you, then I'll know.
I can't hear her.
Thank you. Appreciate you. Can or cannot?
Cannot.
Okay, so yeah, Clara, if you type into the chat, we can get your question answered. It just might take a little bit longer. Okay, so question 66 out of the supplementary exercises from chapter 1. Why don't we look there? Because there was a good question about that content. And darn it, down here. Okay, chapter 1, and it's question 66 out of the supplementary exercises. So I think I've got this sort of close, and we can go down to where it is. Okay, so if we've got these 25N is equal to 25 laminated glass units, and if there is a 0.2 rate of success, like a fracture, if you view a fracture as a success, I'm thinking this sounds very binomial to me. as long as we're sampling in a fair way such that no individual we're not more likely to get a failure on the first draw as the second, or the third as the fifth, and there's independence between them. I'm saying binomial, n of 25, a p of 0.2. And so at most 10, I'm sorry, at most 5, the way I would probably tackle that is with JMP's probability distribution calculator, which I happen to have right here. Now, you could do it by hand. Literally, at most 5 is the chance of 0, plus the chance of 1, plus the chance of 2, plus the chance of 3, plus the chance of 4, plus the chance of 5. That takes too long for me to be happy. I would switch gears over to binomial. I would plug in a 0.2 as my rate of success, if you will, and 25 as the number of trials. And I'm literally wanting to say, well, let's look carefully. Move it over here off the side. At most 5 means 5 or fewer. So less than or equal to 5. I'm going to have a 61.67%. And now I quickly said 61.67%. I always write numbers down in terms of the proportion or the probability. 0.6167 is what I'd write. But what I would say is multiply by 100, slap a percent sign on it. Rarely do I write this as 61.67. I would write 0.6167, but I would say 61.67%. Okay. So what would I do then for strictly between 10 and 5 and 10, between 5 and 10 inclusive? Well, let's talk about 5 and 10 inclusive. So we have to be strictly more than 4, but less than or equal to 10. So 4 to 10. So this is part C. For part D, it's strictly between 5 and 10. So more than 5 and less than or equal to 9. Now with discrete distributions, like the binomial here, you really do need to be careful with endpoints, like strictly more than 5, strictly less than or equal to 10. Yeah, you should be really careful about those. I didn't answer part A. Sorry about that. At least 10. I'm thinking with the probability distribution calculator, you could find at least 10 pretty easily, as long as you put in a value of, well, x is greater than or equal to 9. Yeah, because I'm sorry, strictly greater than 9 is at least 10. Okay. I think the key here is the tool could be helpful for binomial, for Poisson, for exponential, and for normal. In fact, it's relatively quick to use. I'm happy to use it. And shoot, even a screenshot and incorporate that into a Word document, that could be part of what you would upload as part of how you got to your answer. So I would know how you did what you did. So I'd probably be creating as I go, a Word document where I would be putting in screenshots that I think are important and relevant. And then I would attach that as one of my PDF pages to anything else I turned in. So that way I know that I'm turning in what allows the grader, or, well, I'm grading these exams. That is what allows me to sort of, if I were in your shoes, I would want my instructor to know what I did. Okay, so Enrique asked the question, what should I do if I'm using JMP? I would probably write used JMP. And my answer was 0.6167. And I would write C screenshot. And I would then be happy and move on. And the screenshot would tell me, the instructor, as the grader, exactly how you got what you got. And as long as you did it right, I'm all happy. But if you did it wrong, I'm going to say, oh, no, you said less than or equal to 10, but you should have had less or equal to 9. That's a minor misunderstanding of endpoints. That shouldn't be losing all the points to a problem. So yeah, screenshots are helpful. Okay, so 2.1 problem 14b was a request by Abe, and I'm hoping I'm not missing anyone. If I did miss any of the questions, unmute and let me know, because I'm going with the flow right now. So 2.1 question 10. I'm sorry, 2.1 problem 14b. Let's go to 14b. Okay, great question. Okay, so I'll just say, if I tell you the average temperature in degrees centigrade, yeah, you should be able to convert the average in centigrade into a Fahrenheit. You don't have to do the conversion first. And then, you don't have to do the conversion of your entire distribution first and then find the mean of what's left. You could just go with the distribution that you have. And so that's sort of a factoid here that is mentioned for linear functions. And this looks linear because it's got just an x in it here. It doesn't have like x squared in it. Our approach, mu, the mean of our function h of x, is just integrate h of x, f of x. But I could split that apart into, and I'm just going to go ahead and write here. Can I do this? Okay, so let's go with the color of, come on. Okay, I'm going to go with red, and hopefully, oh, my pencil is not working. So I'm going to write this hopefully big with my finger, and we'll see how this goes. If h of x is something that's linear here, the integral of h of x dx is just equal to the integral of, well, in our case, 25 plus 40x dx. And I could rewrite that as equal to integral 25 dx plus the integral, or better yet, 40 times the integral of x dx. And that is just mu x. And I apologize for the color being wrong. My Apple Pencil is not working right now. I'm going to sort of reconnect it. So we'll be able to work in a moment. But the key here is, if you've got a linear function, you're basically done. Okay, so turn off. There we go. I had turned off Bluetooth, and that's what the problem was. Okay, so indeed, I think we're in good shape because because, oh darn it, stop sharing a reshare. Okay, here we go. And stop share and reshare. Okay. So so let's get after then the separate individual parts. Okay, so let's convert that to a pen. In exercise 9, okay, suppose in the library a desperate search for revenue to fund its operations charges the students X squared dollars to check out a book on a 2-hour reserve for X hours. So what is the mean checkout charge? Okay, so I need to refer back to exercise 9 to find f of x. But for problem A, I know the answer has to be found. And let's sort of switch gears here and smallify so still see. Okay, come on. Okay, the answer on part A would correspond to integrate x squared times f of x from problem 9. And that's integrating over the entire range of possibility, negative infinity to infinity. But again, most of those values will probably be zeroed out, okay? So find the integral of x squared times f of x. So that's just the expected value of x squared. Okay, so I think we sort of touched on why B is true. Anyone want me to go into detail on B? I could do a little bit. Okay, so here's a little bit of the detail on part B. Maybe clear that. The integral from negative infinity to infinity of a plus b times x, f of x, dx is equal to, and this is the continuous case, that's the integral of a dx plus b times the integral of x, f of x dx. And I apologize, I have an error here. Let's fix that error. And now add back in the f of x dx. But that's equal to a times the integral of f of x dx. That itself is exactly 1, plus b times the integral of x, f of x dx. And that second term is just mu of x. So we have a plus b times mu x. Okay, so let's just say mu, what we're learning is mu for a plus b times x is a plus b times mu of the x value. A linear function of a variable, we can find the mean through this equation without any hassles. Okay, so Abe, I think that gets after the question you raised, but you want to follow up on that at all?
All good, thank you.
Cool. Okay, anyone else to follow up on that at all? Okay, so the hint on doing the discrete case is just replace every integral in dx with just a summation, and replace every f of x with a p of x, and it works exactly the same. Okay, any other questions that y'all have? Because heck, you might have questions. There is a test coming up, and it starts as soon as 9 minutes from now, if you want to start at 9 minutes from now. Okay, so what I'm going to say then is y'all are question light, and that's okay. It's okay to not be confident with questions just yet. Let me mention office hours between now and when your test actually is due. Well, shoot, in about 15 minutes from now is when the first office hour today starts. And so come back at like, but a different link, come back at 12:10 if you got some questions, or at about 3:25 till 3:50. Again, I could answer additional questions then pretty easily. Also, tomorrow morning, right before class starts up, yeah, we'll have additional time for more questions in office hours. But tomorrow during class, we're going to be moving on into chapter 3, section 3, regression lines, or fitting a trend line through data, the least squares line, if you will. So during class, it won't be questions about the exam unless it's a quick administrative one. But you have time in office hours after class tomorrow at 5:10 p.m. as well. So 4 different 1/2 hour time slots to come by if you have office hours questions. One other thing I would like to mention is in the class discussions section, you can post a question there, and you can post a question for others to address. And if I'm not able to answer a question via email quickly, and shoot, I encourage you to email me questions, but if I can't email and answer it quickly, I'm saying put your question in the discussion and someone else in class might be able to get back more quickly than I. Or if you do email me a question, I'm probably going to just put it right into the chat, not the chat, the what do you call it? The discussion section for the class, and I'll provide an answer there. Okay. And shoot, if you don't want my answer, you know, I've heard that some of you have Discord set up, and so I'm sure you can manage to ask questions of each other without me being involved. But if you want me to be involved, it has to be involving me in some fashion. So that's it for me. If you don't have a question in the next minute or so, where I'll wait patiently, I'm going to stop the recording.
Professor, I didn't see if we have to install a data for the exam.
Okay, so yeah, if I want you to have data for the exam, if I used data points to generate the exam, you know, actual data, I'll provide it to you, and I'll provide it to you somewhere so that way you have access to it. It'll probably
Okay.
be a direct link from the exam, but don't open the exam until you're ready to start on it. That's like
Okay.
a huge mistake. So yeah, it would be just a link that you could click there. But again, you're more likely going to want to use JMP on later exams. On the final exam, it's going to be a fair amount of JMP use. Then the first one, it's a lot of paper problems. So, you know, you could maybe use JMP beneficially, and I'm sure some of you will. But it's not necessary to go out hunt down a data set. It's either you'll create it yourself or I'll provide it to you.
Okay.
Okay, so I'm going to stop the share and I'm going to stop the recording so that way I can then send this to people later. Upload this if you will.